And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Heidi Hollis, author, Coast to Coast AM correspondent, a person who's had a mystical or many mystical experiences and encounters with Jesus, which we're going to learn about and more. Heidi, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the program. This is awesome.
Heidi, if you don't mind, let's start from the beginning. And can you share with us how this all started for you?
So for myself, it's kind of an interesting situation because when I was a child, from the age of 2, I had violent seizures. I wasn't expected to live, or I would grow up to have some kind of cognitive disability, and it was a really different upbringing when you're heavily medicated and going through such a serious illness like that. I recall my dad even at one point trying to explain to me, this is a plot for you just in case something happens. And it sounds awful, but my mother died when I was 7 years old, and he got several plots and wanted to be sure if something would happen to any of us, we could be close to my mother. And what was odd when I had these violent tonic-clonic full body episodes of seizures, they didn't stop. Like some people will have a seizure and they wake up from it. Mine would keep going and going until I was brought to a hospital and given medication to stop. And during those episodes, I would come back with these memories, and I just spoke of them very casually to my siblings, like, oh, I went to the Crystal City again. I saw the angels in the white robes, and I described to people what this place looks like. It looks like very ancient Greek buildings with the pillars and all that. But the buildings are made of pure crystal. But when you go inside, it's marble. And absolutely having the horseshoe-shaped, like carved bench-like seating that's connected to the floor and the whole thing. And I'd go there, and I was so familiar with this place. It wasn't like it was scary or anything like that. And I never thought like, oh, I must have just died, or something, and they just brought me back. But very easily now when I think about it, could have been. It could have been. And for myself, though, it was a joyous thing. And it got to be more and more interesting for myself as I had these seizures and had these trips, because I didn't always have a seizure, and I had these trips to this place, even to this day. So to explain more, I would suddenly get new memories. And it's not like I had a dream. I would suddenly get new memories of having been there and what happened. And it was always so very clear to me that this place was a place of learning, instruction. I was being taught different things of the spirit. And one of them that was quite intense really just has shaped so much in my life. I suddenly found myself on the outskirts of the Crystal City, almost like in a valley of a sort. And there's always this man in a white like gown next to me, and he's blonde, he's blue-eyed, very strong looking, and he would be a step behind me. And we walked up to the Crystal City, and he let me explore it. And I remember coming up to one of the pillars, because I was always puzzled. It's like, it's crystal, but why can't I see what's inside these buildings? And I remember going up to one of the pillars and putting my hand on the other side to see if I could see my hand. And I could kind of make it out. So I was just like, why, what's in, how come I can't see this? What's inside there? And between the buildings, there's like this very neat pathways that kind of crisscrossed with very shortcut, like grass even, and so many other people walking in the white robes, but also I saw a couple of regular people as well going as if they were about to go into one of the buildings as well. And on this occasion, I got a chance to uh, walk up to one of the buildings, and I knew this place. Of course, I've been there so many times, and I walked up to the building, and all these horseshoe-shaped seating was it felt full, but I didn't really see anybody. But I went to my known place. This gives me goosebumps because I knew this is where I sit. And there was literally like a podium made of white marble, and there was an instructor at the front of this classroom, if you will, um, teaching us. And I just literally kind of melted into the whole vibe of all the other souls, I guess you could say, that were there, and just absorbed and took it all in. Um, but and during this same like mystical experience, I had an opportunity to go to one part of the pathway before I went into that building, and there was a pillar with a book like laying on top of this white marble pillar, but it was they had chiseled names in it. It was all made of marble. And I asked my guide, this blonde guy in a white robe. I said, I was looking for some reason to see if my name was there, and I asked him, "Is my name here?" And he said, "No, but soon it will be." And that's when I was led into, to go into that building. So that was a really profound experience for myself, because I got to converse and allowed to explore. And he just kept a step back and allowed me to go around.
Whenever you would have a seizure,
Mm.
on this side, would you go unconscious?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have made over 800 NDE interviews, and it's not uncommon for people to describe a place like you have that's Romanesque or Greek in architecture. And I've had some people see a city from the distance that either look like a glass city.
Mm.
And so I'm wondering if they're seeing the same city that you're seeing.
You know, it's so wild because I remember I had seizures from the age of 2 until like the age of 16. Fortunately, I outgrew them. And I remember the first time I came across a book, and I can't remember the author's name, right? I think it was a Ruth Montgomery book or something. And it was about a near-death experience, and they described the Crystal City. And I remember that overwhelming, like, oh, I'm not alone. It was like, but these people died. I didn't die. I didn't think I died. Um, I never, my siblings, my mother died so young. I don't know if there was ever a time that they had to resuscitate me fully. I have no idea. So I can't claim it. But I wonder. I just, there was such a feeling of belonging, and that was amazing for myself to come across. But I know that people, when they've had like a tremendous experience, that they tend to have others. And as I was saying, and for myself, when I kept having these revelations of having been to this place over and over again, I saw things that I don't even know how to categorize it. I really don't. I mean, I saw an area of where children were being brought into life. It sounds so, I don't question what it is that I've seen, but I just don't know how to put that into words and why I was allowed to see that. Um, and to see this connection between things. But um, you know, and it led to other things. I've written several books on some of the things that I've experienced, from the spooky to absolutely angelic. And I had experiences, because I know we don't have a whole heck of a lot of time to put in it, but I had an encounter with an angelic being that showed me how to pray like the angels pray. And again, it's not something that I question. I call them like waking dreams, when I have these projections of having been someplace else, and it gets categorized in my brain like a memory that actually happened, and it, forms a part of who I am. And I had this absolutely mind-blowing experience where I was shown how words just don't quite suffice in forming what we intend, that our visual life, well, as we're living it, if we put our intentions into what it is that we're experiencing, and kind of packaging it up and sending it off, all your concerns, all your desires, all your wants, into that visual package to God, it's a lot more sufficient.
Can you give us an example of how to pray like that?
Yeah. So, like for myself, I call these picture prayers, and that's what I entitled the book, because that's it pretty much says what it is. Like, if I see somebody that's had a car accident or something, it's like I don't take out time to pray, because prayer happens all the time for me. I see it. My concern is literally right then and there being poured into. I hope they're okay. I hope nobody's permanently injured or killed, or whatever is happening. And seeing that person healing, getting to the hospital, healing, returning home, all of it in one, and then directly as I'm driving by, sending that off as if you're taking a piece of a movie and sending it off to God, with the ending of, "In Jesus' name, please let this be." But it's very visual. It's all the time. It's all day long. We're now to the point, it almost feels like conversations, and a room doesn't feel empty. As how I tell people, a room doesn't feel empty to me, because I'm constantly, wow, that's a beautiful flower, God. I love that you created this, and it's a back and forth now. It's not so much a step of, I'm going to think this, I'm looking at this now, and now I'm saying it to God. It is just an outright exchange going all the time now.
What are you receiving from God?
For myself, I think it's an opening of, and a knowing of what he would mean and intend, and you get the goosebumps of, I see why this is this way. I think that we all can listen. I think we can all feel, and I think that, having had some of the experiences that I have, I think it's made me more open to getting a general idea of what the response would be. So I can't say I'm hearing God. Oh, there you go, Heidi. I think it's more of a nod and a good vibe of yes. It's more of a yes. Like, of course, I think that we all have been taught to some extent to reflect where we came from and to trust that. And I think that we get that vibe and that understanding, that our good training is coming into play here, where we can understand better what God would mean for any situation.
You finish your prayer by saying, "In Jesus' name, let it be," or something like that.
In Jesus' name, yeah.
Is it necessary to do that?
I've been taught, because I'm Christian, I've been taught that is the best way to make sure that it's going to who you intend. Um, there's a lot of things out there, if you know my background, that could intercede and get in the way of intention. So I like to make it clear to whom I'm speaking to.
Before we go on, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about your history. The guy that you described kind of sounds like Archangel Michael to me.
Hmm.
Does that make any sense to you?
You know, I've heard people refer to Michael, and someone suggested once, this is so odd. They said, Heidi, do you think it's Gabriel? And I was like, I never asked what his name was. So I thought that was an interesting question that was asked to me. And I am not kidding you. The next day, that name Gabriel came up 3 times. I went to a water park. It was called Gabriel Slide. I learned my niece was about to name her new son Gabriel, but changed it. It's not Gabriel. It was just like so many things. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this hint. I wonder if that's what his name is. So, and honestly, this was not too long ago. So I've not really sat and focused on, well, what's Gabriel about, So, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know.
Other people who visit the Akashic records also describe it as Greek or Romanesque. And I wonder if where you would go to was a school, but maybe in another building somewhere, the records were there as well.
Oh gosh, I've got a story about that. Okay. I was in college when this took place. I was talking to my college roommate, sitting on our futon, got up, I was in the living room, got up to go, literally to go use the restroom, right? And I took a few steps and I wasn't there anymore. And I mean, I was not there. I was in mid motion and left. And before I knew it, I was looking at this scene in space. And I describe it as like a spinning sun, is what I saw. And it was moving clockwise. Trillions upon trillions of lights were in this spinning sun, and each light was a soul. And I was one of them. And thoughts, ideas, goals, missions, things that needed to be done, every light contributed to the thought as it passed clockwise in this spinning light. And being one of those lights, a thought came by of something that needed to be done. And I remember saying, I think that's something I could do. Like, I casually said this, Jeff. I casually said this. I think this is something that I could do. And it was like everybody took a step back and said, well, she said she'd do it. And before I knew it, I'm being ripped out of this perfect love soup of light into this really cold space. And with everything in me, I'm saying, I take it back. I don't want to go, And I mean, I went through space. And now, interesting enough, just to the light, the left of this light was a spinning red light. And I knew that place as a library of knowledge. People call it different things, but I knew everything was stored there that had ever happened. And I went zipping past this. And then there was like a barrier. And I don't know how to describe that barrier, but there was like a barrier of almost like plasma and something else in space there. And I went flying through that wall to go get trained in the Crystal City and other places as well. And now I'm standing in the middle of my living room when I come back to myself, and I went, how could I forget? How could I forget? How could I forget? And I sat down onto the futon, and my college roommate's like, forget what? To use the bathroom? You never went. And I was like, how could I forget who I am and why I came here? And it was like, I had to remember all the things that I was doing. I'm like, I'm in college. What am I doing in college? This is not what I came here to do. I went to get the phone to drop out of school. And I'm like, and my friend had to go, hold on, Heidi, what are you doing? And I was like, I didn't come here to do this. I came here to work on all of these things that I'm now working on. But that day, I started a UFO group. I started looking into a lot of different topics and started speaking out on different things. I got on Coast to Coast AM. I got on Sightings with Jeff Rentz. I started, all these things all at once, because all that's ever mattered to me is what I came here to do. And I've been on task ever since. I'd say 99% of my day, I'm thinking, what more can I do today? And people are like, well, what is that? What is this mission? What is this goal? I remember, and this is before I was ever born, being in this light. I know it is called the source. People I hear say source this and source that. I say, I don't know what that is. I know the source. It is a part of God. Um, but there is a God head. I can't say I am God. We are all a part of him. But this was definitely a part of him, the spinning light. But for myself, to say what I came here to do is to warn people about the threat that's here, and that being my specialty of shadow people and the Hat Man phenomenon. I didn't study those things. Those things had never been heard of until I started speaking about them, because the information didn't come from studying. It didn't come directly from me. It came from others. And it's not always understood what that is, but that's the truth of it.
Why are the shadow people and the Hat Man such a threat, especially so big that you came here to warn people about it?
They honestly are the modern day devil, Hat Man, and shadow people, the minions of those things. So the threat is, of course, this feeding into a darker source using our very souls to do that. Um, the misinformation, the misdirection, the misguidance, all the things that you can imagine, the threat of these things is very real. People talk about the different alien beings that are here. There is a problem with that. But some of these beings are not being guided by themselves. They're being guided by a darker source. We come from a lighter source. And if there's something that's being guided so wrongly, we need to be aware of it. And it's able to shapeshift. It's able to be hidden, and it's hidden for a reason. There's so much that's going on in this battle, and it's why I called my first book while I was in college, right after all that happened, getting my memories back about why I came here. I wrote a book called The Secret War, The Heavens Speak of the Battle. And they're talking, it's happening, and people need to be aware.
Would you say that there is only one Hat Man, and that basically is the devil, and the shadow people or beings are his minions?
There is one head of Hat Man. There is one, but there are others who mimic him, and I guess you could call them his understudies. But there is one. The minions, shadow people, they tend to do a lot of the dirty work for them. There's also the old hag. There's also a Grim Reaper looking thing. There's also alien beings that also are under the control of this dark source. And it's something that I've been screaming from the highest mountain for a long time. And I've been fortunate to have woke up the entire world to this presence. And a lot of people have run with it, trying to, manipulate it to say it's nothing to fear, guys. This is what's going. There's only one truth to it, and that's what I've been talking about for a very long time now. And it's because of a mystical experience that woke me up to all of this.
So your mission is to warn humanity about this. How should we protect ourselves?
Well, it's not just a warning, but it's also to teach and to instruct in a form, I guess you could say, because you'll see all of my books. I've got 8 out now, with another one coming out soon. Essentially surrounding this whole topic of how to get your thoughts correct and your soul correct on how to envision what this battle is between good and evil. How to realize that there was and is a force that came here to try to even the playing field in the form of Jesus, a part of God, a more direct part of him, his son, to try to give an example of, essentially show an exit away from what's been occurring here, because we are being infiltrated. We hear these stories about the Pentagon, and and they're overly religious and they don't want to let the truth out there when it comes to this whole alien conversation because they think they're demons. Well, they're correct. A lot of these beings are. They are under a dark source that is, the force being with you or not. It's like, what are we talking about here? So there's a reason for the hiding. There's a reason for the secrecy. There's a lot to say about it. There's so much to say about it. But how to prepare yourself is to essentially have no doubts that there is good, there is God, and to call upon that. So many people are like, look, I don't get into that religious stuff. I'm not a Bible thumper either, but I'm realistic and I know what I've seen. I know what's come my way. And it's helped spread two phenomena that nobody's ever heard of before to be now a worldwide known sensation of darkness, and it's sad. It's sad that a lot of people are still kind of what's been told to us by our ancestors for centuries now, that there is a battle between good and evil, no matter what your faith or religion is. Now it's just in our faces more, and we could put it on camera and we could connect with each other to go, you saw that too? You've experienced this too? Why am I afraid to go to sleep at night? Why is this taking advantage of me? I feel like I was about to lose my very soul. Some people get abducted by aliens, but not physically, but they take their souls out of their bodies. How are they able to do this? What's going on? They have near-death experiences. There's aliens at the end of their tunnel. What's going on? And that's where I kind of fit in and try to fill in the blanks.
You may be aware of this, but I've heard Tucker Carlson talk about that the alien situation is so dark, he doesn't like to talk about it. And I actually had Nick Pope on the other day, and he kind of said something about a dark secret. I wish I would have pressed him on that, but do you think that that's what all these people know? Or is that what the dark secret is? Is that it's it's good versus evil?
I think that's part of it. I think there's a lot of fear when it comes to it. And so people like myself have been approached by different people in the government and the powers that be, let's put it
Wow.
that way, trying to get those answers. Absolutely. They know what's going on. And it's a shame and a sham that they hide the truth. I don't understand all of the jumping around and confiscating of ancient things that point to there being this alien presence that isn't so good all the time. So I think in order for us to really get answers, as we see the dance that's going on in Washington, it's not answering anything. We form a committee to get to the bottom of it, and somebody from the committee says they're lying to me. As the head of it says, there's nothing there. So you have to dig for yourself. And what does it matter if they officially say it or not when they're not going to turn themselves in? Because if they tell the full truth, a lot of them would go to prison for some of the things that they've done. So I don't buy into trusting any process. So it's really about our one-on-one understanding, finding those answers, and learning to trust their neighbor when they say something's happening. I have no reason to lie. I have no dog in this fight. It's not a business that you're expected to get super rich off from either. Like, you do this because you're passionate about it, and it drives you. I'm so driven, and it's absolutely has encompassed my entire life. And I knew when I remembered where I came from and why I'm here, nothing else matters. My life is not my own. I didn't come here to settle down, get married, have kids. That's not what I'm here for. It is all about putting the warning out, helping people have the tools to build up their armor and being able to decipher what's in front of them, not trusting their eyes, but to feel with what we've already been trained with from whence we came, to trust what's in front of us. Because if something can shapeshift, it could look like a fairy godmother, and you can let your guard down. But if you take the moment to close your eyes and really feel out what's in front of you, You'll figure it out. You'll know what to trust.
Do you think that there will ever be an end to this war?
Right now, I know that we're in a time of change. People are like, I think they're obsessed with the end times, like, ooh, it's gonna happen, you know? And I'm like, if that's true, aren't you more concerned about your brother, your sister, your neighbor, if we're gonna make it? I mean, we're so obsessed with, oh, this evil stuff's gotta end. Help these people that you know lift themselves up to better understand their own soul, that they even have one. Most of the people aren't even acknowledging they have a soul, let alone all this stuff. But we're in a time of change. I know that's why I came here during this time. And people like myself were finding each other, which is really interesting. Like, I find these really interesting conversations online, and they're like, I know I'm here for this battle, this understanding. I'm like, oh, where are you located? Oh, I'm over here in Ecuador. Oh, well, nice to meet you. I've got this corridor covered. It's almost like a blanketing of this effort, where when they say somebody can come in a room and light it up, like they just have that good vibe. I think there's a vibe that gets put out by people who understand what's happening, and not to be like the all-knowing wizard, but to maybe help a little bit, like to calm the fears. Um, but there's definitely a shift that's happening. Do I think it's the end times? I think it's a time of change, and I think people need to prepare themselves. Otherwise, we're going to lose too many people.
Just to reiterate this again, can you give us some step-by-step advice on how to protect ourselves?
When it comes to protecting yourself from like dark threats, like the shadow people, the Hat Man, they like to come at you like a thief in the night for a reason, because they can't take us on for who we are. They can't. It's like they come sneaking in when you're asleep, you're paralyzed. They paralyze you, and then they go, "Now I got you." Like, oh, big man, ooh, you got me now. You had to do all of that to take out one little me, and they might have a whole like group of them for one person. So what does that tell you? It tells you that we're something to be reckoned with, and to trust that, um, and to know that the light is on our side. God is on our side. If you even say the name of Jesus, these things leave. So having that alone, but knowing that they like to get you when your guard is down, when you're sick, when you're depressed or whatever it is, isolated, they really like to lay it on heavy. So you have to sprinkle a little bit more armor on, and I do that by telling people to bless their space where they sleep, especially. And I don't mean having somebody coming in there and doing it for you. You have to do this for yourself. And a lot of people have different belief systems on what that looks like. I actually did a book especially for that, because I kept trying to describe it to people. But yeah, just to bless your space. And I wear what I use to bless my space. I leave it on. So I have a cross that I use to bless my room. And I never take it off, because they will follow you at work too. They don't always come only at nighttime. They'll do all sorts of stuff for one little person. So I'm all about having no doubts that we came from God, and that's in us. And if we reach out to God, he will answer. These things don't like it. They do not like it. They don't like light. They don't like positivity. They don't like laughter. And they sure don't like God. So anything that's positive, you better believe they're paying attention. Even an alien, so-called alien, how do they know my Jesus? How does that work on them? It's so ridiculous. And I think it's so plain to see what's going on here.
Do you think that these entities feed off of our negative energy?
Oh, 100%. These things love, I think they love theme parks. I think they like places of terror that have happened. They feed on it. They absolutely just indulge. It's something that, even like the churches will say, don't feed into the fear. Don't talk to it, because you're building it up. If there's like a possession or a haunted house going on, there's something to that. So definitely trying to tune it out is difficult, but it can be done.
After any of your seizures, or I guess what went on for many, many years, do you feel like you got any psychic abilities from it?
I've heard people say those who have had seizures are considered to be mystics or something like that. I've always known to have that feeling of whatever this is. I never claimed to be psychic. I never claimed to be anything. Just somebody that had a lot of bad luck. I couldn't understand why have I had this going on around me all the time. I've seen ghosts. I've seen demons. I've seen angels. I've seen aliens. I've seen Jesus, and so many odd things. And I just honestly thought that it was me, but it kind of runs in the family, believe it or not. So I have siblings who have also experienced a lot of things. My nieces and nephews do as well. But I think I got a little extra going on, potentially because of the seizures. I don't know, but I like to think that I just happen to be a regular person who just so happens to trip and bump into things. So
Well, can you share with us some of your encounters with Jesus?
yeah, I sure can. And there's an experience that I had that I'd like to go into as well, if that's okay. Um,
Sure.
this happened in I think it was 2020 that this occurred, like February of 2020. And this is something that I personally have not spoken of. I haven't spoken of this publicly to anybody. I kind of mentioned it to you when we were connecting because I didn't know how to put this or what category this is. And I've been warned by my friends who have had near-death experiences. Heidi, don't say that's what it is. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I'm just being honest that it happened. Um, so I was driving. I had a dental appointment, and I was in Chicago, and I'm going at a pretty steady pace, about 30 miles an hour through one of the side streets. And I was expecting a phone call, and an important phone call. So I was like, I kept my eye on this phone ringing. Made sure I had it close to me, but I had a comfortable distance in front of me from the car that was in front of me, and across the divide on the opposite side, coming from a neighborhood, was a car waiting, and but it was pretty steady. The traffic was, but I think they just grew impatient and they just hit the gas. My phone rang, and I'm like, "Oh, there's that call." I hit it, and I was like, "Hello," and I barely looked down, and I got the phone. I think I had it on speakerphone, and I saw out of my peripheral vision that this car had gunned it and was trying to get across the traffic and get in front of me to this comfortable space that I had, but they did not time it well and T-boned me, hit me so hard. I I just I remember inner me physically hitting this car seat, the passenger seat next to me. Like my soul left and I got absolutely crushed. And next thing I knew, I was up somewhere and I was in a white room and I was laying on this table, and it was it had like the head of the table was at like a 45-degree angle, and it was all white. If I had to say it had a material feel to it, it had kind of a soft like leather feel to it, but not quite leather. And I was starting to talk to the man in white again, in the white robe. I knew who he was. If it's Gabriel or whoever he is, was standing next to me, blonde, blue-eyed, long white robe. And I was in this room that was kind of sectioned off, but not quite fully, with like shears, a white sheer, like curtains that kind of lightly moved, but not a whole lot. And on the floor of this white room was like a haze, like a fog almost, like settling on the flooring where you couldn't quite make out the floor, right? And I'm talking and I'm saying to the man in the white robe, I'm like, look, that phone call didn't distract me to cause that accident. Like, it wasn't me, I didn't do that. And I remember he looked down at me and he just put his attention to the foot of the table. And I'm carrying on. I'm like, I didn't do it, and I'm just like, oh well, I guess I get out of this life then, because there's no coming back from that one, and it's so odd to be so casual even about it, because I knew this space. It had a familiar sense to it, and I knew him, so I was just like, wasn't me, can't like, don't tell the boss I did this, or something. And as he kept his attention to the foot of the table, right? And as I'm talking, I'm kind of starting to lean up and kind of lean over to the edge of the end of the table to see what is he looking at. And that's when I saw like a window, and I would describe it like the size of like a 32-inch like flat screen window, like you would think of a television, but it was a hole in the floor where I could look down onto the accident. And I saw people like that ran out of the neighborhood and got out of their cars, and they were trying to pull at the door to get it open. And the car that hit me, I know what hit me. It was it was an orange Subaru Outback. Like I got a good look at this car, and I watched as the people were doing their best to pry the door open, and then somebody reached in and through the window and got it, but the door is just so crushed they couldn't get the door open. And my head was flopped forward, and I was like, my neck's broken. There's no coming back from that, and I'm just looking, and the man in white, I don't know if his name is Gabriel, the way that this whole feel was of, what are we going to do about that? Like it was like I didn't hear anything. He didn't ask me anything. I didn't get a, do you want to go back? Do you want to stay here type of thing? Like I hear people that have like something like that happen. As I'm leaning forward, it was almost as if I leaned too far forward, and I flipped through that opening in the floor and got sucked into my body. And when I did, like it was a suction and a poof, like an expansion right into my body, and the inside of the car expanded, and it was so fast. It was just expanded, and then it was like I saw things like almost in a flash, like a rewind and a placement. I don't even know how to say. It was like it was like I got reversed somehow. I don't know how to explain it. And it was so abrupt, and boom, I am like in this body, in this car. And I was so puzzled. I don't even know how to say. And I'm like, what just happened? And then my phone rang, the same call I was anticipating. And I just get chills right now. And I went to get the phone, and I was like, oh no, because I knew that Subaru Outback was about to crush me. And I turned to look for the opening in the divide, and it wasn't there. And in fact, I didn't see an opening in that divide for as far as I could see. And I wasn't quite familiar with that neighborhood at all in Chicago. I don't know, but I got placed someplace differently. I got placed somewhere differently, and I really don't even know how to put into words what that felt like. My whole body was tingly, and I had a really like I here I'm going to a dentist appointment, and I got to the appointment. I wasn't far from it, and I remember getting out of the car. I was sitting there for a bit, and I remember going, "Am I back? Am I back? Am I really here?" You know, and I'm looking at the time like I gotta get into this appointment. And I just remember just feeling like if I don't have that appointment, maybe I'm not back in my time. Maybe this is like one of those Mandela effects or something. Um, I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I didn't know how to incorporate it into my reality. But for several days, my skin tingled, and I was wondering if I was in my same timeline. But it really shook me, and I surely didn't talk about it to many people because what was that? I've never heard of it before, but then you told me that you've had at least one other person. I'm like, get out of Dodge because I have not, and how is that even possible? You know, it's just makes no sense to me.
Well, that's kind of the mystery of the divine, because I've had many people be dead longer than they should have been to be able to survive, as well as, things like this where, jumping timelines or going back in time and replaying the event.
Yeah.
That those are just unexplainable things.
Yeah, it really is, and I just wanted to give some time to that because I hadn't spoke about it to anybody, not publicly, that's for sure. But as far as the Jesus encounters, I think my first one was the most profound, to be honest, and I was a skeptic of people who claimed to have seen Jesus at that time. I was in college, and I had seen so many things by that point. I literally wrote in my first book, if Jesus were around, I think I would have seen him by now. Like I was being, smart aleck about it because I didn't know what to call myself. Why am I seeing so much and experiencing so much? But also at the time, a lot of people were making odd claims like Jesus is in my piece of toast and, stuff like that. So I just thought people were making it up. I believed he was real. But I just felt like he was more of a historical figure that's said to return sometime, and I wasn't really big into that whole thing, the whole scene. And I was writing my first book, The Secret War. I had finished writing it, but I was editing it while I was trying to find a publisher. So it was kind of that one of those deals like a little tweak here, a little tweak there. And and I took great pride picking on my friends who went to bed early on a Saturday night to get up to go to church on a Sunday, So, so this one day, I told my college roommate to turn her TV down. I was going to take a quick nap because I worked at 5 in the morning till like 12 noon, and I'd have to go to do my internship or something. And so I waved her to turn the TV down, went into my bedroom, and went to go lay on that bed. And when you get on the bed, you fix your blankets, get yourself comfortable or something. And so I swung my legs onto the bed, and I hit the floor. And I hit so hard. I was like, wow, how did I miss the bed, And I was like, I went to get up, and I'm looking around, and I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. And I'm like, well, where am I? And it took me a bit to realize I was on the front porch of my parents' home. And I'm like, what? How did I get here? And I remember like trying to fill in the blanks. Like I was going to meet a family friend named Quincy at my parents' house. I'm like, yeah, Heidi, that's what it is. You just don't remember how you got here. It was so abrupt. I don't even know how to describe that. And my parents have a long driveway, and I see this man coming up the driveway, and I'm like, yep, here's Quincy now. Okay. That's what's going on, Heidi. Like, I just didn't know. I just didn't know how to filter it. And as he's getting closer, this recognition just hit me like a brick. And I was like, oh, I just palmed my face. And this man got up right in front of me, and I just couldn't take my hands away. And he said something so casual, like he was going to talk about the weather. He's like, "Hello," and I'm like, "Hello," and he goes, "Do you know who I am? If you knew who I was, you would not hesitate to say it." And I'm like, "Oh man, it's gonna make me." I was like, "Well, you're Jesus." I don't speak Spanish. I took German in school, And he said, "Yes, I am." And when I pulled my hands away, I saw literally like off-white robes. Um, I saw shoulder-length hair with like bright light behind his head that absolutely shadowed his face. And I tell people, like, they're like, "Well, how do you know it was him?" And I'm like, I could have been blind and seen it was him because every cell in my body screamed his name. And he started talking about his life and how so much more needed to be done. And he's talking, right? And I am me. I am silly. And I'm just going, this is really happening in my head, right? I'm like, Heidi, you are here. I'm hitting my leg, right? I am pinching, literally physically pinching myself because I don't know how I got transported here. And then I went to touch the ground, which was the cement of my parents' front porch. And then I'm like, why is the ground so close to me? And then I go like exclaim in my head, I'm on my knees. I don't even remember going on my knees. And as I'm looking at the ground, I realize he got quiet. 'Cause I felt like I just got caught like not paying attention, which I wasn't because I was still I was blown away with the whole situation. And I remember turning up to him and taking my hand off the ground and going, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, "First, you need to show us some things." And I'm standing up now and I'm like, us. And I'm looking around and I'm like, there is nobody there but he and I. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's talking about his father. And he said, "You need to finish writing your book," which was the Secret War book. He said, "Do not worry what other people say. Know that I'll be there to give you the words." And this is a strange part because as he's saying this, I'm really close to his face. And it was as if a pane of glass went between us. And I knew I wasn't supposed to hear this part, but I could see his mouth moving. And I'm not hearing anything. And then this pane of glass goes away. And I'm like, think of something, Heidi. Ask him something because I knew he was going to have to leave soon, all of a sudden. And I'm like, I asked him the strangest question. And it's because of some of the other mystical experiences that I've had that I think brought this up, but I wasn't consciously really like, this is what I'm gonna ask Jesus if I ever meet him. And I said, "What's my real name?" And he laughed. And it's just so funny. It was such a light laugh. And he said, "I love you very much, Ilea." And I was like, "Ilea?" I was like, wow. And I watched him disappear into the side of the house there. And I'm like, I want to remember all this because I've had mystical experiences where it's like, it's weird how it's so clear to you when you're there, but you start losing pieces of it. And I'm like, Ilea, I gotta remember this name, Ilea. And I came back into my body and I was not on the floor. I was shocked I wasn't on the floor. I was still laying in the bed and I didn't want to move because the love that came off from him was so overwhelming. I didn't want to lose it. It's like I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. And it just encompassed me. me, and as it started to fade, then I wanted to knock on the wall to get my roommate's attention to tell her what happened. So I went to go knock on the wall, and that's when another thing happened. And I don't usually give a whole lot of attention to this part because I think the presence of what I experienced was more important than anything. But I'll tell you, what took place was so odd. When I went to go knock on the wall, I suddenly found another presence came into the space, and I couldn't move my arm. And I started getting pulled into this similar scenario. I was inside my parents' home. And I'm like absolutely confused. I'm like, I just had this beautiful experience. And I'm standing in the middle of my parents' kitchen, and it's extra large and it's distorted. And then I hear this horrible voice come over my shoulder, and it drug its words out like a snake. And it said, "Are you sure of what you saw?" And I was like, "What?" And I turned to look at this thing, and it had black eyes, and it was wearing like a meat mask of a family member, but it was wearing it loosely, right? And I was like, what the heck is this? And then it repeated itself. And they said, "Are you sure it wasn't Quincy who you saw?" Which is who I thought Jesus was at first, this family friend named Quincy. And I was like, "Look, I don't know what you are and what's going on here, but I know who I saw." And I started to say the name, and it said, "There goes a Quincy now." And here came this image of this family friend, Quincy, and he did this thing did this 3 times. There goes another one. There goes another one. And I was like, I said, "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I know who I saw." And I saw, and I started to say his name. And that's when I heard what sounded like a thousand like crashes of glass off to my left side. And I turned to look, and that's when this thing that was over my shoulder had backed up. And this other creature started charging at me, and it pulled back a dagger. And the dagger was wavy. It had a wavy knife on it. I've never seen a knife like that before. And he pulled it up, and he was just about to stab me right here. And I was like, "Jesus, help me." And I felt like this grab from my center over my shoulder and yanked me out of the scenario. And I was back in my bed, and I just started pounding on the wall to get my roommate's attention. And I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know what had just happened. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I was still like in the love of Jesus, like that feel that I had. And I just told my roommate, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Jesus, I saw." I'm like, my roommate was Pentecostal, and I loved picking on her for being Pentecostal and all religious. And I'm like, "I saw Jesus," and I'm carrying on and on. She's like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And all I kept telling people was, "Wow, Jesus is no joke. Like, he's real." And they're like, "Duh, Heidi," and they're like, "Something must have happened to you that you're talking like this," and that's why I titled my book, "Jesus is No Jokes," a true story of an unlikely witness who saw Jesus, because he came several times. And my I've seen him more since I wrote that book, and he changed everything. He absolutely changed everything. And something he told me, the thing that really stuck with me was, "Don't worry what other people say. Know that I'll be there to give you the words." I took that as I was very shy. I didn't like speaking, and not even in class, you know. Here I am, I'm a therapist. It's a very tough program. I would give up grades so I wouldn't have to do my presentation. So I knew I had to get straight A's and everything else so I would meet the level that I needed to, because I would not do the presentations ever. And so for when he said that, and I got my book, The Secret War, out, I was like, the only reason I'm speaking is because he told me that. I would never have taken the step forward to speak. And I would go to speak at a conference and I'm looking at the exit to leave. And still to this day, before I do an interview, before I speak anywhere, I say, you promised me to give me the words and I'm holding you to it, because I have nothing to say. Because I just, so people who think, oh, that's that alien lady, oh, that's that shadow person lady, it's only because I had the encounter I did with Jesus.
Earlier, you talked about this being a time of change. Would you say the same thing as what many people believe and call it the ascension?
I think a lot of people are anticipating things that they've read, things that they know of from other teachings. I don't know about those teachings because I really haven't stopped to read 100% of the Bible. I haven't stopped to listen to all the speculations that are out there. So I don't really understand what people are so anxious about, because it doesn't sound a whole lot of fun to me. So it's I know what I came here for, and I know that there's a lot that's going to happen. I know that first off, the only thing that's worth saving here are the souls. So many people are like, save the planet, do this, do that. I was told the earth recycles itself. This is what it does. It will cure and heal itself where it needs to. And what will it cure itself of? Us, So, yeah, there's a lot of sunken cities that we're finding. Wonder why? Perhaps the earth healed itself. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that have taken place. Civilization has been wiped out again and again because this is what happens. It recycles. But if we are to be gotten rid of in great numbers, there is something here. There's a presence here that is interfering with some of the people that are crossing over to the other side. So it's intercepting, it's infiltrating, it's abusive, it hoards souls. This is one of the reasons why you'll hear of a haunted location and there's that shadow being, and you'll hear EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, saying, here he comes, like, who's he? There's so much of that going on around the world. But this is something that I was told, that this is what's going on here. And it's the government likes to call the darkness tricksters. Oh, really? Tricksters. You know what it is. What's a trickster? The devil? Hat Man will tell you outright he's the devil. He calls himself a lot of things, but he is what he is. And but he doesn't look human. He doesn't look like the stereotypical paintings and stuff that are out there. He looks alien. Absolutely looks alien if you got a good look at him, but you wouldn't want to. But yeah, so there's a time of change going on. There'll be a transitioning of people. There's a certain vibration that this world is at right now. Everything vibes at a certain level. And if there's any change to that vibration, it'll alter how we're held together. And some of us will notice the transition, others won't. It's just like for myself, when I had that mystical experience of getting hit by the car and thrown, and all of a sudden I'm on the other side. It was so quick. I was familiar with where I was, and we are familiar with where we came from. So I think there's going to be a lot of on where people recognize where they came from, and those who are not familiar. I think we're all just different.
Do you think very soon we are going to go through the end of this change and through the end times and start over again?
Um, you know, nobody knows the day or the hour, right? I think it's interesting that there's a lot of us here who are saying that we're here at this time for a reason. I mean, I've been talking about this for decades now because I've just always been painfully honest, as close to all that I remember. I'll repeat it and put it out there because that's all I know is what my purpose is. So I think that I think we all feel something is coming. Um, but then when you look at old black and white photos, people are holding up signs saying the end is near. We are not new to this. Having apocalyptic dreams, I've had them. They're horrifying. And you feel like this is going to happen any day now. I have felt the heat of things, and it is confusing to wake up from a vision dream like that and wonder how you are not frying somewhere. I saw hot lava coming through a city. I was horrified. I was within inches of being burned alive, and it took a few minutes to figure out where I was, coming back from that. And I don't understand that process because it's happened to me where, again, I'm in mid motion doing something and being transported to a whole other reality that's not quite here. So I don't know what that is. But it happens. And I've had people write me. Now this is wild. I've had people write me who have seen me in other locations where I help them with something, and they'll send me their photo and say, "Do I look familiar?" And sometimes they do. Sometimes I know the story. And I'm like, "But how did you find me?" And they're like, "You told me your name, silly." What? I don't remember that. Um, but it happened before I was really out there because I had a UFO group for a long time and I had a website, and people started sending me messages. I just so happened to come across your website and I can't believe you're real, and just the strangest thing. So I think that there's something going on here that we don't quite understand. And I think everybody knows it'll be all right if you're on the right side of things. So to fear it, it's, there's nothing that you can really do to stop it, but you can do the one thing that is of most importance, is to figure out your soul and get it right on the right side, the positive side of things, because there are dark things just gambling on you not to get it straight. And I was told to look for certain signs of a culmination of things, like these shadow beings and Hat Man showing up in greater numbers. And here we are, we're at that level. So there's a threat. And I just, hope and pray that trying to serve as an example, put out information, talking as much as I can, helps inspire people to go in a better direction to find answers for themselves. I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody does. So you have to piece it together for yourself ultimately.
Do you think there are any good ETs out there?
Oh yeah, that's what I had a lot of contact with for my first book, The Secret War. They were beings that spoke of God, that spoke of Jesus being who he said he is, who said that they've been called a lot of things through time, and that they weren't ones to infiltrate and to try to change a habitat. Like if you want a creature to survive, you don't mess with where they live. You let them thrive in what they're comfortable with. The more negative ones grab you, abduct you, experiment, tell you lies, and all sorts of stuff. While there's a more positive group out there who will try to inspire, try to educate, try to inform and warn. And it's a whole different ball of wax with them. And they don't look like the Greys, the reptilians. the praying mantis, I was informed that, there's these types of groups of beings that were familiar with it, abuse people, right? And I was part of these groups, watching the transition of people who slept with a gun under their pillow, quite literally, for an alien coming to abduct them or their children, and watch these same people say, well, hold on, I'm special that they're choosing me. And I'm like, hold on, dude, you have a gun that like, and watching this whole thing go to it's a positive thing. It's okay. And I'm like, what's happening here? It was really something to watch. And it concerns me that so many people are so accepting of the outright abuse that these beings will do every other time they see them. Uh, I tell people if I had a friend who slapped me every other time they came to see me, I wouldn't want them to come, and wouldn't think they're a good friend. Um, but I'm not here to what other people believe to be true for themselves. I'm just trying to share there's a threat going on. There are positive beings who are trying to equip us to understand that. And if these beings that are abducting you, I'm sorry, they say contact now, um, say these words, Jesus, if they don't like it, they will leave. Why does that name bother them so much? They don't like to come and say, hey, how are you doing? I'd like to experiment on you now. Do you mind coming aboard? No, they take you like a thief in the night against your will, whether you learn to let your will go at some point or not. And they do awful things. And it's a matter of control. Um, they say, oh, our species is dying, so we've got to make hybrids and whatnot. And it's like, they're building an army. They're building something that's stronger than them that could live upon the planet and do certain things for them, be under their control. So otherwise, they'd have us marching under their control, which some people are so highly influenced. Yeah. um, but it's you really have to go back to your soul training, where you came from. Are these things good? Like, really be logical about it. Are they okay with the words Jesus, God, how about planning this meeting next time? It's like there's a lot of common sense that's just not applying to these beings because they have a shinier ride than we do. They're just as rotten as humans can be, or then there's others that are really positive. But I was told the beings that have these abduction like traits and the things that they do to people have one thing in common, and that they are under the influence of Shadow and Hatman, Dark Source. They are essentially possessed alien beings. They have been conquered, and we just happen to be next in line. So there's the common thread. and I've been talking about this for a long time. Now people are talking more, oh, did you know that shadow people are related to aliens? I'm like, that's what I've been saying the whole time. The paranormal ghost hunters have taken the shadow people topic like, oh, this is in the haunted castles. No, it's not so limited. It is widespread. They are seen right alongside of alien beings. Why would they be? Um, is it a coincidence you happen to be a person that gets abducted and experience shadow people or a hat man? Why is that? So many big stories and people that experience aliens have been overrun by shadow people. Well, I'm telling you why. I didn't study this. This came from positive alien beings and other training that I had before this lifetime. And people, I think it's just, I guess it would be easier if I was schizophrenic or something. But, to say, that just can't be, but I get it. It's something that is so far out there, but now the pieces are coming together where I think people can let that in their conversation and say, wow, I know John has that. I know this has happened. And I've been trying to lay this out there for so long. But taking little pieces of it it's not right. You have to look at the whole picture if you really want to get ahead of this. And things have escalated to a point where it's important. It's not just a possibility you're going to experience these dark things. It's a threat. They are eyeballing each and every individual person. And we're in a time of change. They're very desperate to get as many people rallied and on the wrong side of this. So it's just so much involved in it.
If people want to find out more about your books, should they go to a website or Amazon?
My books are everywhere, but HeidiHollis.com. They go to Amazon and look for my books, Heidi Hollis. They'll find it. And then also my podcast that's on Coast to Coast AM. It's called Dark Becomes Light. It's free to listen to. I have a YouTube channel, Heidi Hollis. So yeah, it's something I'm doing everything that I can, and I've got books for kids. I'm a cartoonist, so I have outlanderscomics.com or the Outlanders Comic on Instagram, or they could follow me on social media at one Heidi Hollis, just a one in front of my name. So most of the social media, that's what it's under. But yeah, and I tell people if they're experiencing something and they have questions to feel free to reach out, and I try to get back to everybody at some point. So if you want to share your experience from angels to aliens or shadow people to Hat Man, I'm here to help.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Oh yeah, I think people need to focus more on instead of living what they see and seeing what they live. It's like, don't trust your eyeballs, trust your heart, trust your gut, trust your soul. It's there for a reason. And good always wins in the end. Plain and simple. We'll be okay. Just hang tight and try to help out each other to get to that point.
Heidi, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.